accomplish them when you did take your children's lives?
Maybe in their innocent years, God would take them up.
God would take them up to be in heaven, is that what you mean? All right. And if you had not taken their lives, what did you think would happen?
They would have continued stumbling.
And where would they end up?
Hell.
Picture a sun-baked Houston suburb where the relentless Texas heat mirrors the inner torment of a devoted mother, unraveling thread by thread, her once bright eyes now hollow with the shadows of postpartum psychosis, until one fateful June morning in 2001, Andrea Yates, in a haze of religious fervor and fractured sanity, methodically drowns her 5 young children in the family bathtub, their final gasps bubbling up like accusations from the depths of her shattered mind. A tragedy that would grip the nation, pitting mercy against monstrosity in a courtroom battle over the soul of madness. Born Andrea Pia Kennedy in 1964 to a devout Catholic family in Houston, Yates grew up as the third of 5 children, excelling in swimming and piano, her valedictorian speech at Clear Lake High warning of Satan's temptations, a portent of the demons that would later consume her. She met Rusty Yates at a church picnic in 1989, their whirlwind romance fueled by shared evangelical zeal, marrying within months and embarking on a quixotic life aboard a repurposed school bus they named Chez Yates, traveling the country while Rusty pursued a computer career. By 1994, settled in a modest home, Andrea birthed Noah, embracing homemaking with fervent joy. But the cracks appeared after her second son, John, when severe postpartum depression struck, confining her to bed for weeks as hallucinations whispered of inadequacy. Undeterred, they pressed on, welcoming Luke, Paul, and finally tiny Mary in 2000. But the strain mounted. Rusty's long hours at NASA, Andrea's isolation, and the influence of preacher Michael Woronecki, whose sermons on hellfire and maternal duty echoed in her ears, urging her to shield her sinful children from damnation. The tipping point came in 1999, after Noah's birth, when Andrea attempted suicide by overdose, landing in a psychiatric ward where doctors diagnosed major depression and prescribed antidepressants. But upon discharge, she flushed her pills at Rusty's insistence, believing medication a crutch of weakness. A second breakdown followed in 2001, with Andrea methodically stacking furniture to climb to heaven and drowning her cat in the tub, foreshadowing the unimaginable. On June 20th, that sweltering day, with Rusty at work, she filled the bath, starting with 6-month-old Mary, holding her submerged until the thrashing ceased. Then Noah, 7, who fought briefly before going limp, followed by the others in descending age, their bodies laid reverently on the bed as she called 911, confessing calmly, "I just snapped." Rusty rushed home to a scene of serene horror, the children pale and still, while neighbors whispered of the perfect Christian family gone awry. Police arrived to Andrea rocking silently, her wet hair the only sign of the deluge within. And as news helicopters buzzed overhead, the world reeled at the betrayal of maternal instinct. The investigation was swift. Autopsies confirmed drowning, no signs of struggle beyond the obvious, and Andrea's interviews revealed a mind warped by delusions. She believed Satan inhabited her children through her imperfect parenting, that killing them would redeem their souls. A twisted theology gleaned from Woronecki's tracts warning of hell for flawed offspring. Charged with capital murder, her 2002 trial became a spectacle, prosecutor Joe Aumby painting her as a calculating killer, while defense experts like Dr. George Ringholtz testified to irreversible psychosis, exacerbated by sleep deprivation from 5 pregnancies in 7 years, and Rusty's pressure to expand the family despite warnings. The jury, swayed by a prosecution psychiatrist's claim she knew right from wrong, convicted her of drowning Noah, sentencing her to life without parole, but an appeals court overturned it in 2005, citing prosecutorial misconduct in discrediting her insanity. The 2006 retrial ended in acquittal by reason of insanity, with jurors tearfully acknowledging her tormented state, committing her to Kerrville State Hospital, where she remains, medicated and monitored, her interactions with Rusty, now divorced, limited to supervised visits, a ghost of their former life. Yates's saga ignited debates on postpartum mental health, birthing laws mandating screening and the Yates bill in Texas for better psychiatric care. But at its core lies a heart-rending question. Was this murder or mercy in madness? As Andrea gazes from her window at the Texas sky, does she hear the echoes of laughter turn to silence, or only the relentless drip of regret? In the pantheon of filicide, she embodies the fragility of the maternal bond, a cautionary siren against ignoring the shadows that lurk in the nursery's glow. Imagine a fog-shrouded Victorian England where the industrial grime of Bristol clings to the cobblestones like a shroud, and in the dim corners of overcrowded tenements, desperate unwed mothers whisper their secrets to shadowy figures promising salvation for their illegitimate offspring. Enter Amelia Dyer, a seemingly benevolent nurse whose gentle smile masked the cold precision of a serial killer, a woman who turned the cradle of motherhood into a grave for over 400 innocent souls, her crimes unfolding like a gothic nightmare across decades of unchecked horror. Born in 1837 to a respectable family in the bustling port city of Bristol, Amelia Elizabeth Smith, later Dyer after multiple marriages, grew up in a world where poverty and propriety collided with brutal force. Her father, a master shoemaker, died when she was just a child, plunging the family into financial ruin, and young Amelia, the eldest of 5, was thrust into a life of labor in a Bristol workhouse, where the cries of abandoned children echoed endlessly, planting seeds of resentment in her impressionable mind. By her early 20s, she had married George Harding, a bricklayer, and bore a son. But tragedy struck when Harding died of typhoid in 1869, leaving Amelia widowed and adrift. Undeterred, she remarried swiftly to William Dyer, a journeyman painter, and immersed herself in nursing, training under a midwife who would unwittingly ignite her dark path. By the 1870s, amid Britain's baby farming epidemic, where impoverished women paid nurses to care for their bastards in exchange for a weekly fee, Amelia saw opportunity in despair, advertising in newspapers as a compassionate caregiver willing to adopt or foster infants for a modest sum, her letters laced with pious assurances of Christian charity. What began as neglect, starving the babies to death to pocket the fees, escalated into calculated murder. He would dose them with opium-laced laudanum, strangle them with white tape to mimic natural causes, or simply let them waste away in filth, their tiny bodies bundled in brown paper parcels and dumped into the River Thames, like yesterday's refuse, her home in Reading reeking of death, yet evading suspicion through frequent relocations and forged adoption papers. The year 1879 marked her first brush with justice, when a baby's corpse was discovered, leading to a manslaughter conviction and 6 months in Oxford prison. But far from reforming her, incarceration only honed her cunning. Upon release, she reinvented herself under aliases like Mrs. Harding or the saintly Mother Dyer, expanding her operation with accomplices, her daughter Mary Ann, and a network of desperate women who lured more victims through classified ads promising a good home for your little one. By the 1890s, her killing spree peaked in Reading, Berkshire, where the discovery of 6 strangled infants in a carpet-lined ditch near Caversham Lock in March 1896 unravelled her empire. The babies, wrapped in Dyer's signature brown paper stamped with her address, traced back to her via a pawnshop ticket clutched in one tiny fist, a desperate clue from a mother who had grown suspicious when her payments ceased. Police swarmed her cramped cottage at 45 Kensington Road, unearthing a charnel house, decomposing parcels, bottles of poison, and ledgers tallying fees from over 100 adoptions in mere months, while Dyer, now 57 and frail, feigned piety, quoting Bible verses even as she confessed to sending them to Jesus. The inquest revealed a horror beyond comprehension. Autopsies confirmed strangulation, starvation, and laudanum overdoses, with estimates from timelines and witness accounts suggesting 200 to 400 victims over 20 years, making her Britain's deadliest female serial killer, outpacing even Jack the Ripper in body count. Her trial at the Old Bailey in June 1896 was a media sensation, the press dubbing her the Reading Baby Farmer as crowds clamoured for details of her devilish trade. Dyer pleaded guilty to one murder, that of 13-month-old Doris Marmon, whose emaciated body bore the telltale tape marks. But the judge, unmoved by her claims of divine visions urging her to save the children, sentenced her to hang, her final words a chilling hymn, "I have saved them from a world of sin." On June the 10th, 1896, at Newgate Prison, the trapdoor dropped, ending a reign of terror that exposed the underbelly of Victorian hypocrisy, the exploitation of the poor, the failure of social services, and the lethal allure of unchecked greed. Yet Dyer's legacy lingers like a ghost in the Thames, inspiring reforms like the 1897 Infant Life Protection Act, which regulated baby farming and mandated registrations, a faint echo of justice for the voiceless lost in her web. As the noose tightened, did she hear the phantom wails of her tiny charges, or only the clink of sovereigns in her pocket? In the annals of maternal monstrosity, Amelia Dyer stands as a sentinel of sorrow, reminding us that the line between nurturer and destroyer is perilously thin, forged in the fires of desperation and delusion.
The thing that really haunts me the most, at night when I close my eyes, I can see Christy reaching her hand out to me while I'm driving, and the blood just keep coming out of her mouth. That haunts me the most.
Under a canopy of Oregon's midnight pines, where the whisper of wind through evergreens conceals unspeakable sins, Diane Downs hurtles her bloodied Mazda along a rural lane in May 1983, her 3 children slumping in the back seat, 8-year-old Christy gasping for air, 7-year-old Cheryl lifeless from a point-blank shot, and 3-year-old Danny paralyzed, frantically concocting a tale of a bushy-haired stranger who ambushed them, her cool demeanor unraveling the facade of the devoted mom into one of America's most infamous child killers, a saga of obsession, betrayal, and brazen lies that would captivate and chill a nation. Born Elizabeth Diane Fredrickson in 1955 to a middle-class Phoenix family, Diane grew up a restless spirit, her high school beauty masking a manipulative streak, cheerleader, honor student, yet prone to fabricating dramas for attention. At 18, she wed Steve Downs, a man she cajoled into marriage despite his hesitations, birthing Christy Ann in 1974, Cheryl Lynn in 1976, and Danny in 1980. Their union a volatile mix of Diane's affairs and Steve's infidelities, culminating in divorce amid her pursuit of postal worker Nick Nixon, the obsession that ignited her dissent. By 1983, relocated to Springfield, Oregon, Diane juggled motherhood with her mail carrier job, but rejection from Nick, unwilling to leave his wife, festered into rage. Fixated on winning him back, she viewed her children as encumbrances, their needs clashing with her romantic delusions, confiding to friends wild schemes like insurance scams or outright elimination. On May 19th, under a waxing moon, Diane parked on Old Mountain View Road, rousing the groggy kids with a fabricated roadside breakdown. Armed with her .22 Ruger, purchased weeks prior, she fired methodically. Cheryl twice in the chest, crumpling instantly. Danny in the arm and back, severing his spine. Christy in the wrist, hit and shoulder, the bullet grazing her heart. Then, for verisimilitude, she shot herself superficially in the forearm, speeding to Mackenzie Willamette Hospital, where she burst through the ER doors, cradling Cheryl's corpse while demanding, "My kids have been shot." Her affect eerily detached, humming as surgeons fought to save the survivors. Christy's survival proved damning. Under anesthesia, she whispered, "Mommy shot us," corroborating Danny's mute testimony via his wheelchair-bound future, while ballistics matched Diane's gun, fibers from her car at the scene, and her timeline riddled with holes. No stranger's footprints, her wounds self-inflicted scratches. As media swarmed, dubbing it the Highway of Tears Redux, Diane charmed talk shows with crocodile tears, but cracks showed, flirtatious jailhouse notes to inmates, claims of faked pregnancies to ensnare lovers. Indicted for murder and attempted murder, her 1984 trial in Eugene was a circus, prosecutor Fred Hughey eviscerating her bushy-haired stranger myth with Christie's testimony. The girl, tubes snaking from her frail form, recounting the betrayal in halting sobs. While Diane took the stand, her testimony a rambling defense laced with narcissism, insisting on her innocence even as evidence mounted like a noose. Convicted on all counts, she received life plus 50 years. Her appeals laced with recantations from coerced witnesses. But freedom eluded her. In 1987, she birthed a daughter, Amy, via conjugal visit, adopted out immediately, and escaped prison briefly in 1989, recaptured after a tip-off. Paralyzed Danny, adopted by Hughie, sued for emotional damages, winning a settlement that underscored the lifelong scars, while Christy, resilient yet reclusive, penned anonymous letters decrying her mother's manipulations. Downs' case, chronicled in Anne Rule's Small Sacrifices, fueled debates on borderline personality disorder, Diane's diagnosis of histrionic traits and possible Munchausen by proxy. But at heart, it's a portrait of ego-eclipsing empathy, her prison writings unrepentant, blaming everyone but the trigger finger. Today, at 70, she languishes in Salem's correctional institution, plotting appeals from her cell, oblivious to the ghosts on that Oregon road. What alchemy turns a mother's love to lead? Diane Downs' Highway of Horror teaches that the deadliest shots come not from strangers, but from the heart's shadowed chambers, where desire devours duty.
I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much.
30 years is just not enough. This wasn't an accident. She deliberately killed Michael and Alex.
In the still waters of John D. Long Lake, South Carolina, where cattails sway like indifferent sentinels on a chilly October night in 1994, Susan Smith releases the brake on her burgundy Mazda, sending it, and her strapped-in sons, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alex, plunging into the abyss, their screams swallowed by bubbles as she watches from the shore, tears streaming not from grief, but from the calculus of a forbidden love that demanded their erasure, a deception that unspooled into national infamy, transforming a small-town mom into a symbol of maternal perfidy and racial hysteria. Born Susan Lee Vaughan in 1971 to a mill-working family in Union, South Carolina, Susan's childhood was a tapestry of trauma. Sexually abused by her stepfather, Beverly Russell, from age 7, a Confederate flag-waving politico whose predation shattered her innocence. Her biological father's suicide in 1988 deepened the despair, leading to suicide attempts and therapy, where she confessed suicidal ideation tied to killing the boys in fleeting dark moments. At 21, she married David Smith, a co-worker at the local mill, their union a bid for normalcy. Michael arrived in 1991, Alex in 1993, but cracks widened under infidelity and financial woes. Susan's affair with Russell resurfacing as twisted therapy, while a crush on Tom's 27-year-old son ignited her fatal obsession, the young black man rejecting her advances, viewing the boys as barriers to their liaison in a town steeped in segregationist shadows. On October 25th, after a church potluck where she prayed for guidance, Susan drove to the lake's remote ramp, the boys dozing in car seats. With a whispered, "I love you," she unbuckled, kissed their foreheads, then floored the gas, the car teetering before submersion, windows cracking under pressure as she fled, heart pounding with feigned alibi. 9 days of orchestrated anguish phone. Load, tearful pleas on national TV, who could hurt 2 beautiful children, ribbons tied on trees, a carjacking narrative pinning blame on a black man in a ski mask, sparking racial tensions and FBI hunts, her performance Oscar-worthy until divers dredged the Mazda on November 3rd, the boys' bloated bodies inside, seatbelts intact, no water in lungs suggesting a prolonged, panicked drowning. The ruse crumbled under polygraphs and witness accounts of her flirtations, her jailhouse confession admitting the act as a snap to clear her path to Tom Jr., though prosecutors unearthed diaries revealing premeditation, entries musing on life without the burdens. Indicted for 2 counts of murder, her 1995 trial in Union County transfixed the South, defense claiming a bipolar break from abuse, but DA Tommy Pope portrayed cold calculation, playing her TV pleas against crime scene horror. Jurors unmoved by her sobs, convicted in 2 hours, sentencing life without parole, her wail echoing through the courtroom. Russell's testimony, defending his own abuses, drew outrage, while David, shattered, divorced her amid custody ironies. Incarcerated at Camille Graham Correctional, Susan's bids for parole, first in 2024, fail amid public scorn, her 2024 hearing replaying the boys' photos. Board denying unanimously as Michael and Alex's ghosts loomed. She's birthed 2 sons in prison, one via guard liaison, adopted out, perpetuating cycles. The case birthed Susan Smith laws, curbing false accusations, but lingers as a racial flashpoint, her black carjacker lie fueling stereotypes, and a filicide archetype, where love's rejection births lethality. At 53, Smith journals poetry of remorse. But does the lake's murmur forgive? Her plunge reminds us that the deepest drownings happen in the heart's murky shallows, where secrets sink families whole. Envision a crisp December evening in 2022, in the quiet cul-de-sac of Dagenham, East London, where fairy lights twinkle mockingly in neighbours' windows, oblivious to the domestic storm brewing in a modest flat on Cornwallis Road. A mother, Cara Alexander, high on the haze of cannabis-fueled psychosis, lures her 2 beloved sons into the bathtub with promises of play, only to hold them under until their bubbles cease, a double drowning that shatters the illusion of suburban serenity and exposes the lethal undercurrents of addiction and unravelling minds. Born in the early 1970s in London's working-class sprawl, Cara Thomas, later Alexander through a turbulent marriage, navigated a youth scarred by instability. Orphaned young, she bounced between foster homes, finding solace in the rhythm of dance classes and the fleeting escape of substances. But motherhood in her 30s brought fleeting hope. Elijah, her spirited 2-year-old, with his infectious giggles, and Marley, the thoughtful 5-year-old who dreamed of superheroes, both born to a union strained by Cara's escalating cannabis use and her partner's absences. By 2022, the family teetered on the edge. Cara, 47 and unemployed, chain-smoked joints to dull the anxiety gnawing at her. Bills piling up, whispers of custody battles, and a mind fracturing under the weight of paranoia. Convinced, shadowy figures lurked to steal her boys away. Doctors had prescribed antipsychotics for her emerging delusions, but she self-medicated instead. The THC amplifying her terrors into full-blown psychosis, where voices urged her to protect her children from an imagined apocalypse. On December 15th, as twilight bled into night, Cara drew the bath, calling Elijah and Marley with feigned cheer, splashing toys to mask her intent. Marley entered first, trusting as ever, his small frame submerging without protest, until Cara's hands clamped like vices, his final plea a gurgle lost in the froth. Elijah followed, the toddler's instinctive fight brief against her unyielding grip, their bodies limp as rag dolls when she pulled them free, methodically drying them, dressing in crisp pajamas and tucking into bed as if for a nap, the flat silence broken only by her soft humming of a lullaby. Hours ticked by in eerie calm before guilt cracked her facade. At dawn, she dialed emergency services, her voice a monotone confession. "I've done something terrible to my babies," guiding paramedics to the scene where the boys lay, skin pruned and cold, the bathwater still faintly pink from their struggle. Responders recoiled at the tableau, 2 cherubic faces frozen in repose, no signs of forced entry, pointing squarely to maternal hands, while neighbours, roused by sirens, recalled Cara's recent oddities, erratic pacing, mumbling to shadows, her once vibrant laughter replaced by vacant stares. Detectives from the Metropolitan Police descended, piecing together a timeline from CCTV of Cara buying bath salts the day prior, and toxicology reports confirming high THC levels in her system, the drug's interaction with her underlying schizophrenia, triggering the homicidal delusion that drowning them spared them greater suffering. Her phone yielded frantic texts to friends, "They're coming for us," and a chilling journal entry, "To save them, I must end it." Charged with 2 counts of murder, Cara's 2025 trial at the Old Bailey transfixed Britain, prosecutors arguing diminished responsibility amid her voluntary intoxication, while her defence barrister painted a portrait of a tormented soul, experts testifying that cannabis psychosis eroded her grip on reality, her IQ plummeting under chronic use. Jurors, haunted by crime scene photos of the pajama-clad victims, deliberated mere hours before convicting her. But Mr. Justice Benathan, eyes steely with sorrow, imposed a life sentence with a minimum of 21 years, acknowledging the cannabis-induced psychosis, yet decrying her failure to seek help. In the aftermath, as Cara was led away in restraints, sobbing for the first time, the case ignited fury over mental health waitlists and the perils of recreational drugs, prompting calls for mandatory psychosis screenings for heavy users and expanded family support in London's underfunded boroughs. Today, in the echoey confines of Bronzefield Prison, Cara battles sobriety and therapy, haunted by Marley's drawings and Elijah's favourite teddy, while their father, a peripheral figure in life, grapples with grief-fueled rage. What drives a mother to trade bubbles for burial? In Cara Alexander's Fall, we glimpse the abyss where love twists into lethality, a stark warning that the monsters we fear may dwell not in the dark, but in the mirror of our unheeded cries for help.